Nikkie the burglar. Nikkie has been at it again. Our Dutch friend has been going crazy across the internet with a new controversial product launch, but this is not Nikkie Diego. This is not Nikkie Tutorials. This is Nikkie Plessen, who's also a Dutch beauty person. My name is John. This is Cookie Tea / Cookie and Courtroom. Hope you are comfortably sat down and titties are firmly strapped in. If not, they're going to be taking an A1 flight all the way around the moon to orbit and maybe even go to Mars. You just never know nowadays. Babies have been flying around the world because this lady has released a set of products under NBEAUTY and brands. Not really a catchy name for her Instagram, by the way, I'm sorry. But she's released these foundations and she has 7 shades. And obviously that's not that many for a foundation, and people have been really angry about this. So I thought we would cover this from a consumer perspective and then also cover it from a brand perspective, because obviously I own my own brand and the compliance issues and stuff. I thought we'd have a bit of a talk about that and the various things that you have to do to sell a foundation in each shade, right? So anyway, let's look at the picture. So it's called The Collection, The Face Collection. Quite boring marketing, to be honest with you. The actual tube itself looks to be glass. It looks to have a nice pump on the top, and I actually like the shape of it. I think it's very simple. I think it's pretty. I think the fact that it's not frosted means that you can very clearly see the colour on the inside, even though it might oxidize when it goes onto your skin and change colour. It looks to be a simple but pretty product. I'm not against the tube actually, and I think the marketing is very clean and simple. I think the collection is fine. I think she probably has an audience of mixed languages, so to keep things simple is probably a good idea. It's not like a British brand or an American brand targeting specifically American people. But yeah, it looks to be fairly simple with the brand and whatnot, but it works. I'm not against it. I think it's well executed. I think it's fine, you know, and I think it's not as noisy as the American brands and the UK brands. You know, we're very shouty with our marketing, but it's understated, it's simple, it looks nice. Why don't we read the description? So it says, the Natural Luminous Foundation is a real no makeup foundation due to the innovative and light texture. It feels like second skin. It gives you an even, natural and matte tint that leaves you with a luminous complexion. It makes sense. I think it doesn't sound groundbreaking, but it could be an amazing foundation. It does sound cool. I think it would have been good to have some pictures of it on people's skin probably. Anyway, why don't we go into the shade range? So at the lightest end, we have this pale shade. It doesn't actually look to be that pale, but it will fit most people. It's not like a specialized foundation range, you know. Then we have a sort of medium tone, which looks to be pink toned, a medium tone that looks to be yellow toned, a medium deep tone there, which it looks like a sandy color. I would call it after Too Faced sand. And then we have like a light beige, a medium beige as well next to it on the left. And then we have these 2 deeper shades. We have a very, very deep shade, which I think would be deeper than you would use with sort of like a grade 4 skin tone. It looks deeper than that. So like an Indian complexion, for example, you'd most likely be mixing the second to last and the third to last shade together to get your shade. And then finally we have this very, very deep shade at the end, which I think was very socially important to include, even if they don't have a very light shade, which would actually most likely sell more units for their audience because they are based in the Netherlands, where people have very pale skin often. It's important as a social media brand to be supporting deeper skin, because for years deeper skin tones haven't been supported, so obviously that's a really good thing. Anyway, as you can imagine, with a 7 shade foundation range in a time where brands are releasing 40 shades, 50 shades, big brands obviously, it looks like comments were being deleted calling her out, and she was telling people to mix shades, saying like, if you want the shade so much, why don't you just mix it? Just buy 2 shades and mix the colour that you want. Obviously that wouldn't take into account undertones, but it's an option. It's completely an option, right? So that's quite interesting. I think what's difficult here, and this I guess I'll go from like the brand perspective, and I have spoken about this before, but when you release a product, especially in Europe, which obviously being Dutch in the Netherlands, they are in Europe, the guidelines and the stuff like that are very strict of what you can and can't sell, and the compliance, that's the key word, that has to be done to sell into Europe is very strict. It's not the same as the US, and it's not the same as Asia. Asia's very relaxed mostly. US is a bit more relaxed, but there is still things in place. There's accountability. But when you're in Europe, it's very, very strict. It's regulated. You need to have a responsible person, which needs to be a company that can do tests and stuff like that. Every formula, you need a product information form, a CSPS, and COA, certificate of analysis. There's so much paperwork, and it's expensive to generate it. And that's not only per product, that's per shade. Now, usually companies that do offer compliance services, they don't do really any of the work. You have to still do the work. You just pay them. It's almost like a protection money, almost, or like mafia style, but it is a legal requirement. It's like an insurance almost. In that respect, it's not insurance, but that's how you can think of it. In the UK, you have to have insurance to drive a car on the road, and if you drive a car without insurance, you get into a lot of trouble, basically. Whereas the US, I know you don't necessarily need insurance to drive a car, right? But also in the UK, because of that, because you have to have insurance, a lot of companies have really high prices for insurance. So when I first passed my driving test, for me to drive a very, very basic, inexpensive car. My insurance was something like £3,300 a year, which is about $4,500 to $5,000 for just the insurance for 1 year, which is expensive, right? But fully comprehensive, but still on a car that's worth like £500, $700, $800. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, that's just a bit of an idea with complaints. Usually companies do charge a bit less per shade as opposed to per product, but it can still go in the region of $400, $400, 400 euros to $1,000, 1,000 euros, depending on who you go with and what services you're asking for and what testing and stuff like that. There's so many options that you can choose from. And also, can I just say here as well, I wanted to include this. I spoke to a big manufacturer a few years ago about making something, which I'm now making with someone else actually. And it's in the process, but I'm slow with these things. And they literally give you a sheet of like, your product form. You sort of give them a target price of what you're aiming for. Do you want heavy metals testing? Do you want to test the formula afterwards for heavy metals just for safety? You should not need to if you're buying good ingredients from a good place, but huge brands like L'Oreal, for example, it doesn't really cost them anything in the grand scheme of things to do heavy metal testing on every formula that's made, whereas a smaller brand to spend an extra £1,000, £500 is a lot of money, right? Whether a product is tested on animals or not, it's literally a tick box. It's not like, our manufacturer is cruelty-free, we support cruelty-free makeup, the lab that we make in does not test on animals. Like, it's not like that. Like, this manufacturer had a London office but was based in Singapore. You literally just tick a box whether you want them to test on animals or not, right? So like anyone that uses that manufacturer, like I just wanted to tell you that because I feel like a lot of people's perception is cruelty-free is completely separate to non-cruelty-free. With my factory that I personally work with and my contract manufacturing facilities that I contract on making certain products, it's 100% cruelty-free. I don't work with companies that sell into countries where they have to test on animals and stuff like that, or that they test on animals themselves personally. At the moment, it's not really ever caused an issue for me to say that either. Like the people I work with are cruelty-free brands. It's very straightforward. It's very popular. It's only certain brands that want to sell into certain countries that aren't cruelty-free. Wet n Wild, Pat McGrath Labs apparently, L'Oreal, Maybelline, those sorts of brands. But yeah, like I did just want to mention that, like, it's not as polite as people think it is. Like manufacturers abroad, big ones, will just literally give you the option of yes or no testing on animals, because they test on animals, right? They have the facility, they will pay someone to test on animals, and they do for other brands. They just won't do it for your brand, right? It's not as nice as like, we don't support cruel. Yeah, your brand doesn't, but your manufacturer does, right? I just want to put that out there for a lot of brands. Anyway, why don't we read some of the comments on this that happened across the internet. So Raw6574 said, I'm sorry I just died at the thought of the company saying, well, if you want it so bad, make it yourself, and expecting people's money. Oh God, that's rich. Basically saying like, well, if you want your shade, just buy, just make it yourself, just mix it yourself from the products. And Pestacat said, that's rich. It also scans perfectly well if it reads as that's the rich in this case. R7 something said, this is such BS. Even is you mix the two shades to get your correct shade, there is still only one undertone per shade. So most people, even professionals, couldn't work with such a bad shade range. It's true, but you know what? I knew someone that was doing a makeup course years and years ago, maybe like 5 years ago, 8 years ago. And they were specifically told to buy 3 shades of foundation from MAC. And I think they were expensive. One of them was a really deep shade, one of them was a really light shade, and one of them was a medium shade. And I don't think they did anything with undertones. So I think for TV makeup, perhaps, you don't really need to worry about undertones that much if you're covering someone in makeup and you can get kind of the right undertones. But for a residential day-to-day foundation, you obviously want it to be perfectly matched because you're not lathering yourself in it. Most people don't. So yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I guess it's kind of different. Exactly. You would need to buy 2 shades to get the right depth and then the colour mixes from another brand to get the right undertones. Literally no one is going to do that, lol, which is true. Face Elia has a similar range, but they have adjuster shades, so makeup artists can actually create a wide variety of shades with different undertones. This brand should have an adjuster shade and perhaps even sell discount bundles if they're going to go with this approach, as it is though this is not good enough. So she's expecting people to pay €70 for 2 foundations if they want to get their shade. Like we say, Dutch, dat is clownery, schlatt. Sorry, my Dutch is obviously not that good. That's quite interesting. Anyway, one thought that I had about this, and this is something that I personally been thinking about, for example, is when I eventually do complexion makeup, which I would love to do one day, but the amount of investment, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually develop 40 different formulas and not just change the pigments, but how they actually set so you don't get ashiness on deeper skins. It's a really expensive process to do a really good job of it to a standard of like high end, which is obviously what I would be aiming for, a mid-range price point. When I do that, my plan is actually to do like a little, when you buy pills, they come in the little things and you can pop the pill out. I would really like to do like a small pill style thing that you can peel open that has every single foundation in, and it's only enough to really dip the tip of your finger in. But the idea would be you could swatch it here, because this is where you swatch foundation when you want to match your skin tone usually, because that's the sort of neutral area. You could buy that for literally £3, £5, £10, whatever. Swatch them all, find your perfect shade, and then order the actual foundation knowing it's going to be the right colour. That's what I plan to do, because I hate going to the store and trying a foundation and waiting for it to oxidize and then looking at it in the store lights that aren't that accurate and then getting home and it's the wrong shade. That's my pet peeve, and I'd rather give people the option to just buy it from us directly and buy a sample and test it and love it and use it a couple of times and then buy it. Do you know? That's what I'm thinking anyway. But the same thing actually goes with fragrances. I've been wanting to do, if anyone's ever bought a product from me, you'll know that there's a fragrance in the box usually. Not now, because we've had to ramp up our capabilities, so we've not been able to do the fancy experiences that we did before with the gold and the diamonds and the wrapping paper and the scents and stuff like that. We will do in the future. But a lot of people ask me, like, John, what's the fragrance? Can you please sell the fragrance? Because it's really, really strong and it's really, really nice, right? So that's something that I would like to do. But my thinking with the fragrance was that free of charge, I'm probably going to include a sample of that fragrance inside my lipstick boxes. So if I'm making X number of lipstick boxes, every single one I will personally pay to include a very small sample of the perfume so that everyone can try it and see if they like it. Because it's the worst thing thinking, I kind of want this, but I don't know if it's going to work for me, and I like the idea of it, but I haven't smelled it, or I want this palette, but I don't know how it performs. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm a big person on samples and testers, and like I'm very generous with my products. Like, if you buy a lipstick, for example, from a general from Ulta Sephora, you might pay $20, $24, $26 for a lipstick, right? And all you'll get is a liquid lipstick in a very basic packaging, a very basic tube, and maybe 3.2 ml formula. Whereas I do 6 ml formula. I also include a sharp applicator if you want to use it for like lip art and stuff like that. I also include a standard lip applicator if you want to share it with a friend so that they can do it cleanly and not have to share the same wand. So I include an extra wand. I also include a brush, a custom made brush that you can use for application. So you can either use that for concealer afterwards if you've made a bit of a hiccup, or you can use it to apply the product if you want a really, really, really sharp finish and your experience with the formula. I personally prefer to use brushes, but if I'm on a time crunch, like day to day, I would just use the normal wand because it's very convenient and you can still get a great finish, but the brush is very precise. I also include diamonds inside every single box, so they're real crystal diamonds. Not real diamonds, obviously, because that would be like $1 billion, but real crystal, not cheap acrylic. I also include a little leaflet, which is really cute, and it's got like an inspirational message on the back and instructions on the front of how to use the product. And my point is that there's ways to give consumers the extras, right? So people have tried my brushes because they've bought them through the lipsticks, right? So if I then release a brush collection, my customers will know the quality to expect from that brush collection because they've already tried my brushes for free from the lipsticks. Do you see what I mean? Same with the fragrances. Like, if I send them a sample, even if they don't like that particular fragrance, they'll know how long lasting it is. So they might want to try a different one that I release, and I describe it as being something that they're into smell wise, right? So that's just something that I find confusing sometimes with these brands. I think often they release products, but they don't think out of the box of like, how can we actually get this product into people's hands? Products don't sell themselves, you know. Maybe for influencers they do because they have dedicated fans, but for proper brands, you need a selling point, right? So I do think that's interesting, but it looks cool. It looks simple. It gets the job done. I don't know. There's a beauty space. There's a lot of brands nowadays. It's a very big space, but I think we'll have to wait and see what happens. You know, I haven't heard of this brand before, and I don't know if we'll hear of them again, but I wish them the best of luck with this product. I hope it's a great seller, and hopefully if it does sell well and if there's a success, I absolutely think they will expand their product range. But my whole point is that you have to make minimums for each shade, and if you're a small brand and you have to make 1,000 units per foundation shade, or even 500 units, if you have 7 shades, that's like 3,500 units if you're making 500 of each, which is a very, very low number for a manufacturer to make. And that's a lot of units to have sat there. So if you're making 1,000 units, which is a normal MOQ for foundations, even 3,000, you're talking 7,000 units of product sat there. That's a lot of product to shift for a small brand. And that's a lot of cash to have tied up in stock. It's very difficult to grow with that there. So even launching this might have been a struggle for them, to be honest with you. That's why I haven't released complexion products yet. That's why a lot of small brands don't release complexion products in the EU, where they have these regulation of ingredients and products and compliance and stuff like that, because there's just no point releasing a product. Like I said in the past, I could release my foundation formula now, but I'd only have 4 shades I could afford to launch probably, because it would be thousands and thousands and thousands, you know. But I don't know. That's just my thinking with the situation. I'm interested to know what what you think. Do you think this is completely unacceptable? Do you think that they shouldn't have launched the product? Or do you think it's fair enough that they launched it, but they should have included some additional mixes for the undertones? Personally, I don't think anyone can be bothered like mixing their own foundation and doing all the undertones unless that's specifically what the product is made for. Like a DIY foundation, I would get it, but this kind of product, like a finished foundation that you then have to add to. Anyway, I'm sorry for my very brief absence. I know I cut myself off mid-sentence, but I actually got a call from a Doberman rescue centre. I've been trying to rescue a dog for ages. I don't mind whether it's a pug, bulldog, there's loads of different breeds. I literally don't mind. I just want a little thing to cuddle and rehabilitate. But I actually got a call from a centre today, so I'm very excited now. This is really good news. But really hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.